Just a Family. This is your latest episode of Giving You Something to Talk About, live TV. My name is Melissa Krechler. I am your host. I'm also identity coach, spiritual teacher, business mentor, as well as founder and creator of Just a Live TV and the Women Supporting Women Can Network. You can find me on all my socials in the comments. Today, we're going to be talking about why are you still not putting yourself first? This episode is crazy because how many things do we look at every day that tell us to put ourselves first? And how many of us are still not doing that? So today's episode is sponsored by Thriving Woman Counseling. And they want you to go and check out their 8-week group group therapy sessions, 8 weeks of group therapy. They have every 8 weeks or every 9 weeks, they have a new session for you. So go and check that out. They also offer 15-minute consultations. So go and check out those links. Those links are in the description of this video, and go and check them out, because if you are struggling, they are definitely going to help you. So I'm going to hand it over to my guest co-host today, Lynne. I'm not even just about to start, and then I'm like, no, I'm gonna screw that one up. Probably Modzelesky.
Yes.
I tried it. Look it, I tried
Yes.
it. Okay, Lynne, please introduce yourself.
All right. So thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. Yep. My name's Dr. Lynne Modzelesky. I'm a clinical psychologist. I am the therapist and the founder of Thriving Woman Counseling. I do individual and group therapy, all virtual. So if you happen to live in either Pennsylvania, North Carolina, or California in the States, please come see me. And I work with women, and a lot of my focus in my practice is how to take care of you. So things like boundaries, self-care, to stop being so critical of yourself and sort of just get support from other women. That's the area that I really love to work with. So I'm really excited to talk more about it with you today.
Absolutely. For all of those watching, please go like, follow, and share the show on your social media accounts. Sign up for our newsletter at justalivetv.com, and let's get started. So my first comment of why are you not putting yourself first? And the follow-up of that is, how many things are we seeing on social media, on the regular media, on social media, in magazines, newspapers, YouTube, TikTok, all over the world? We're seeing put yourself first. But how many women are still not doing that? There's so many women, and no shame or blame or guilt or anything, no judgment if you are still in this game. But at the same time, there's this old misconception, and this has been a patriarchy conception since the beginning, that as women, we are supposed to put our husbands, our children, our career all before ourselves. And that is a hugely ingrained misconception. Majority of us should be putting ourselves first. Now, there's a difference between putting yourself first and not caring about what anybody thinks, and putting yourself first and still being a loving, caring, and being there when your family needs you. There's a difference between that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're completely right. And I agree. Maybe since the pandemic and things like that, there's been a lot of focus on mental health, and you need to take care of yourself, which is good. I mean, it's good for people to be thinking about this. And so it is all over social media. And I guess the exposure for like wanting to take care of yourself is good. However, how many people, like sort of day in, day out, make it a part of their routine? And maybe that's where the issue is. Like, it's like a lofty idea. Maybe some people maybe don't put it into practice because maybe they think, how can I? Like, if you're working full time, if you also have children to raise, if you also are going to school, if you're, the list can go on forever. And so maybe some people think they simply can't. Like, it would be great, but in practice, maybe they don't think it's possible.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. And I get questioned how I do it myself. I own 6 businesses. I run them all by myself right now. I have 4 children. 2 of them do not live with me because they're adults. And then I have a husband and a ton of animals. And people are like, how do you work all that? And I said, boundaries, routines. And you know what? One of the biggest things, and I'm going to hit straight on motherhood, okay? And this goes for fathers as well, is we're an example, right? And we're the ones leading by example. We're teaching by example. There's a TikTok floating around that a woman says, how many of us adults today were told that we weren't allowed to play, relax, or do anything fun until our chores were done? How many of us were told that, right?
Yeah.
That simple, easy statement has created a complex, because she goes on and she says, how many of you can actually relax in today's
It's hard to do,
right? Because you've been conditioned and your brain has been wired to think, I can't stop and I can't rest and relax until all of my stuff is done.
Yeah. And so we have this like sort of creation of all the anxiety behind, like, at night when you finally probably lay down to sleep, the like running list of like, did I do that? I need to do this. Oh my goodness, I have to write this down. I could, like, so there is, even when your body gets a chance to like, rest for a few minutes, all these things come flooding in. And maybe it's like, we just, like, our culture may sort of make that worse, like hustle culture, I guess. I think I've heard people say like, like you have to be like, maybe there's something inherently wrong with you if you're not like busy all day. But so it can be really hard, I think, to live up to. And I like that you said boundaries too. You said boundaries, meaning like boundaries with other people, but also like yourself, like respecting yourself enough to be like, I have a limit of what I can take on. And, this is where it is. And so communicating that, I think, is a really, really powerful thing. And I think that boundaries is also like one of the central things that we talk about in the group that I run. So it's important. It's important for everybody, but it is important for like busy women, like busy women who are caretakers, and the caretaking role that we just sort of usually take on can maybe make that worse for us, like, putting us sort of in the back burner, and everybody else, we're worried about them so much.
Yep. So my youngest is at home. She's sick today, getting over a massive head cold, and my door's closed. 6 months ago, before I started the show, my door was never closed. And even if it was closed, she would just barge right in. Like there was no boundaries. There was no respect. It was just, I'm allowed in mom and dad's room whenever I want. She would just barge in. And since I started the show, if that door is closed, they don't come in. They don't knock. They don't call me. They don't come in, because I've had to teach them that boundary of mom's in an episode, mom's in a show, mom's doing meetings. You need to be out, right? And respect that. And they learned that. And that's why I'm talking about even just teaching our children is, if I don't show them that, one, I'm putting myself first, two, that I have boundaries, that three, it's okay to need that time to yourself and need, to not be in that role all the time. I love being a mother. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely do. But being a mother is not who I am. It is a role that I have, right? I was not born a mother. I was born myself. And whether I chose to be a mother or not, or, whatever the circumstances may be, I love the fact that I'm a mother and I love my children, but they are not my number one priority. I am, right? And they need to respect me as much as I respect them. And that's what I'm teaching them, is that you are your number one priority. Focus on yourself. Stop focusing about what everybody else thinks, what everybody else believes. Focus on yourself and make sure you're getting what you need. My daughter and I had a discussion the other day. She was being very selfish the other day, very selfish. And she said, but you always tell me to put myself first and only think of myself. I said, there's a difference though. And that's why I, at the beginning of the episode, talked about that difference between, putting yourself first in a selfish way, or putting yourself first because you need to put your mask on first so that you can actually we're better parents, we're better entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
we are better individuals when we are taking, you know, taking ourselves and making ourselves a priority.
Yeah, definitely. You know, how do we have the energy to take care of all these little people or animals, or like, you know, in both of our cases, like the people that we treat or coach, you know, like how would we even have the energy to do all that and come into a session as our best self if we're not taking care of us? And like, um, so you're right. There is like a fine line of like, and maybe it takes, I don't know, modeling, or maybe it takes maturity or something to kind of know like selfish versus self-care. Like, but I also think that a lot of people think that, am I being selfish? You know, like if this is a new thing, if like self-care is a new thing, like the doubt may come in, like, am I being selfish? Should I not, you know, like, should I not say yes to helping this person? Should I not say, you know, like, and what does that make me? So I feel like the transition is maybe a little bumpy too, you know, like when you start, if you're somebody that's starting off. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes to learning who you are, learning your
Mm-hmm.
identity, learning your boundaries, learning what your energy and your body and your mind, learning how all of that balances and gives you those yes. You know, if you're not wholeheartedly feeling that it's a yes, then it should be a no, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you're wholeheartedly not feeling it's a yes because it's slightly out of your comfort zone, then that's a whole nother story. But
Mm-hmm.
self-care, personal development, self-care, putting yourself first, there is a lot of work to that. At first, it doesn't continue to be a lot of work. Once you get into the rhythm of it, once you see that your friends and your family and your loved ones are respecting that, it becomes a lot easier and it becomes a habit. It's like a second nature to
Mm-hmm.
just do it, right? Having a hot bubble bath with, you know, if you're spiritual, with crystals, if you're not spiritual, with a glass of wine, whatever, you know, doing whatever it needs, getting out in nature and going for a run with the dog, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
looks like to you, but making sure that you're giving yourself time to recharge, to relax your emotions, to be able to say, hey, you know, I'm okay. I've had a stressful day. I'm pushing my boundaries. I'm pushing my limits, but I need to just take some me time, and
Yeah.
understanding that, you know, the more you push yourself, and we're taught to push ourselves when we work out, when
Mm-hmm.
we in business, we're taught to push, but there's a fine line between pushing yourself too far that's actually going to damage yourself, right? If you push yourself too
Mm-hmm.
far without knowing your limits, you know, you do more damage than good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, um, you know, one of the ways you find your own limits is sort of like tuning into like how you feel. And sometimes we beat ourselves up for having certain feelings, or does that, you know, maybe there's something wrong with me if I'm feeling anxious or whatever. And it's like, maybe your feelings are trying to tell you something. Like maybe you need to pay attention, like, you know, to whatever it is, this feeling that's telling you, like, maybe I need to slow down, or maybe there's something about someone's expectations of me that's sort of like making me feel uncomfortable. What's that about? So like tuning in is okay. And I think that that's probably where a lot of the work begins, like, and giving yourself permission to like, this is okay to have this feeling, you know, like it's all right for me to also, you know, feel anxious or feel overwhelmed or feel however, you know, like happy, sad, whatever, fill in the blank. But you know, and then communicate that to whoever needs to hear it. Hopefully too, like I don't know about you for coaching, but like in therapy, I know there's some people who start to develop like an awareness of where a boundary is, and then they communicate that to somebody. And sometimes people push back. And that's strange too, you know, and can also maybe make a person feel guilty, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That comes down to people pleasing and, you know, not wanting the confrontation. I host a lot of, I've had a lot of, well, a lot of my courses have communication in them. And we should learn how to properly communicate with people. Our beliefs, our feelings, our thoughts, they're our own. And I know you being in psychology, you'll understand this as well, is that when you start talking to somebody, um, it isn't, you did this or you did that, or I feel this way because you did that. It's, I feel like this. And for my own health and my own well-being, I need to express this, or I need to say this. It's not against you, or, and take responsibility for what you're saying. It is not anybody else's responsibility to put you first, to make you happy, to make sure that you're fed and your well-being is taken care of. Your parents' role is done when you can do it yourself, right? We're not transferring that to our friends and our partners and our children. That's our job, right? We're supposed to teach ourselves how to do that. And so when we start to have that communication, the only reasons that people fight a boundary or fight something is because, number one, people don't like change. Most of us do not like change, right? And if you have somebody in your life that's constantly saying yes, and all of a sudden they say no, automatically that internalizes as, oh my God, I did something wrong. They're mad at me, or they're pulling away, or they're changing the dynamic. When somebody argues a belief with you, it's because, one, your belief is threatening their comfort. Number two, your belief is threatening their belief in their belief. I know that's kind of convoluted, but that's
too unstable for them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah.
So one of the things I really wanted to talk about, that you and I had talked about in our pre-screening, was life crises. Oh my goodness. So anybody who's not putting themselves first, we already talked about, pushing yourself too far. Well, what actually happens when you push yourself too far? We're not just talking physical. We're not talking we're talking physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic. When you push yourself too far, you have these life crises, right? The things that you're ignoring, sorry, not annoying, the things that you're ignoring or pushing down, they're eventually going to pop up in one way, shape, or form, right? How many people create, and not intentionally, it's subconsciously and energetically, but how many people create diseases or injuries within their body because they're pushing themselves, because they're not working at what they need, and they're not listening to their bodies or listening to their mind or their energy to say, you need to slow down.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research, and actually I've done some research in my graduate programs about people who the role of things like anxiety, hostility, negative emotions, and kind of the toll it takes on the human body over time. Even in young adults, you can start to see a pattern of if you're somebody who might want to self-report measure, score high on anger, anxiety, or hostility. There start things that start to happen to you, ulcers, high blood pressure, migraines, chronic pain, the list goes on. So this is important. I mean, it's important that we become aware, I think, of when something maybe we won't become aware if we're not maybe in touch kind of with our emotions until the stuff starts to happen. But you talk about the crisis, whenever that starts to come up for you, maybe it's sort of you're forced to kind of tune into these emotions. It's sad to say that it had to go on for so long, though, in order for somebody to want to stop and kind of assess the situation. But yeah, I feel like maybe mindfulness exercises may help people who might feel like they might be traveling down that path, just they're not to the life crisis yet, hopefully never, but the mindfulness piece might be helpful then.
I actually created a 3-month life crisis coaching package just for that purpose, right? Because
oh my goodness,
even what happens is you can have one of the happiest, positive people in the world. If you're one of those people who you live positively, you follow the positivity movement, mindfulness, gratefulness, all of that, and you're unconsciously or consciously ignoring any negativity or just brushing it aside or just saying, that's not going to touch me. You're not processing anything. So what ends up happening is, as you're high vibe, as you're positive, because we know the positivity movement is toxic, as that keeps going, you're not actually doing anything about those negative emotions. So there are people who are suffering silently with negative emotions. They don't even know they have at that point because they're not processing them, right? So you can have the most positive, upbeat, laughing, outgoing people, excuse me, who are super happy, when in reality, underneath, they're starting to burn out. They're starting to break down. They're becoming emotionally unstable. They're becoming mentally unstable, and not in a terrifying, a psychotic way. Even if you are, that's totally fine, right? We all have psychotic tendencies, so don't worry about that. I do. But it's getting to that point, right? And then when they actually do falter and they actually do break down, they're like, what is going on? What is wrong with me? And then all of those negative emotions that you've been ignoring or pushing down or even pushing aside, all of those end up coming out. And that's why people have such, depression, anxiety, that's suicide even, right? Is when you have that influx of negative emotion that you don't know how to handle. You work with veterans. Veterans have a very hard time with that, because when you're in the military or the army or any faction of government, you become that faction. Your identity becomes consumed with that faction, right? You look at any military training, it's everybody's wearing the same thing, they're doing the same thing, they're eating the same thing, everybody's expected to be soldiers in the same army, right? Your identity goes through the window. You are, private or major. That is like, that's who you are. Your identity goes to the wayside. I've talked to a couple veterans on the show who, once you come out of that life and you become a veteran, it's a crisis, because now you're going from this huge, immense identity of being a part of this, brotherhood and sisterhood and family. Now you're a civilian. That alone causes disaster, because now you have to try to figure out who you are again after all of that, right? You have to figure out what your identity is, but beyond, being a veteran.
Yeah. And I think that
no supports for that.
No, there's really not, I feel like, enough support. I know that, there's so many people transitioning out of active duty right now into, either retired military, veteran status, whether they ended their term of service or retired, however many years. I feel like it's a huge adjustment, and civilian people really just don't even understand what goes on. So, even if you try and articulate what you've been doing over these 20 years, it's like, okay, so, people just don't understand. People don't there's so many things. And I think that I really, really love working with veterans. I do day in, day out. It's an area that I have a lot of experience in. And I think that role transitions, like you talked about, from active duty to veteran, but even how when we were talking on the pre-screening call, we talked about empty nesters, that's another role transition, and
life crisis,
who am I now if I'm not mom? Who am I now if I'm not, sergeant so-and-so? Yeah, retirement. Ooh,
so we did
so many.
And that's why I did the life crisis. Instead of calling it a midlife crisis, it's a life crisis, because the empty nester, the, veteran, the, widow or divorcee, all of these things, right? When you focus so much of your time and your energy and your life on one thing, right? And then all of a sudden that one thing is different, not necessarily gone, but different. That's why we don't, and I'm going to backtrack. We don't put ourselves first throughout. So when I get married, it's now, instead of being Melissa, I'm now Tom's wife. When I have children, I'm not only Tom's wife, but I'm also their mother, right? My identity keeps shifting. If I don't put myself first in my relationship, in my motherhood, in all of this, I'm going to consistently and steadily lose the idea or the ability to feel connected to my identity. Right? Who am I? What do I like? If I'm not actively engaging and learning and growing throughout that period of what do I like? You know, what do I need for my self-care? What makes me happy? What calms my emotions, right? When you don't focus on that, and then all of a sudden you become an empty nester, or, you know, divorce. When people become empty nesters, divorce is very common. And same with retirement. Because again, they haven't put enough focus on that relationship and on themselves to say, okay, the kids are gone now. Who are you?
Yeah.
Never mind, who are you? Who am I?
Who am I? Yeah, like that's a really common thing that a lot of women I'm seeing come to therapy for. You know, like, now what? After this transition, now what? And so it's like, you need to figure out the now what, you know?
Even people who are in the middle of, you know, you look at, I love working with high profile individuals, regardless of what that looks like. And that doesn't mean I single out high profile individuals, but I do have a soft spot in my heart for high profile individuals, veterans, all of that, because I get it. I'm one of those unique people. I get every situation. Like, I understand it. I understand the feelings behind it. I understand the process behind it and what you would feel and what you could. I'm very analytical. So I'm the oddball in this century. Like the Einstein of mindset. But so when you get to a certain point, you say, you know, somebody like, I'm not even going to put out any names, but you think of any musician or celebrity or politician or whatever, right? They're constantly working at a grind to get where they're going, right? And then they're thrown into this lifestyle of, hey, I've made it. Who am I now?
Yeah.
Who am I now? Right? You look at how many high profile individuals get into abusing drugs, sex, alcohol, violence, all of that, because one, they don't know who they are anymore. Two, they're thrown in a lifestyle that they sure as hell don't know about, pardon my language. And three, now they're questioning what next. But the rest of the world is saying, you know, what do you have to be upset about?
I know.
Like, you have everything. You look at veterans, right? And everybody's like, oh yeah, you know what? You just did this most amazing thing, and we're going to commend you, and we're going to crowd you, and we're going to, you know, say that veterans are all great. And then nothing gets done to support them, because everyday 9-to-5ers or everyday civilians don't know what it's like to lose themselves to their career, to their lifestyle, until they become an empty nester, until they divorce, until they, whatever that looks like, retirement. They go through all this time not realizing that, hey, it's going to happen to me too.
Yeah.
And they expect help, right? And we give them help. It's a vicious cycle. Life crises are happening to everybody. And it's because, and I'm going to say this a million times, it is because we're not putting ourselves first. That's literally what most of our crises come down to.
Yeah. And it's okay to put yourself first.
And it's okay to be wherever you're at. If you're not putting yourself first and you're overwhelmed and you're ready to scream and break down and you're just exhausted, that's okay too. It's totally
And we have
fine.
and we have all been there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Mindset expert or not, I could lie in my bed for a day and go, oh my God, what's going on today? Right?
Yeah.
Because we all, and that's the thing, we're all not going to have perfect days. We're all not going to have a perfect life. Everybody in this world is meant to struggle one way or another. And that's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we become better. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, I don't want to keep you too long because I know that you've got other stuff to do. So is there anything you'd like to add before we get going?
No, other than I really love talking about this with you today, and thank you for letting me on your show.
We're definitely going to have to do this again. I could have talked about
Yes,
this for hours. One of my favorite topics. Favorite topic.
I know, me too.
All right. Well, thank you again, Lynn, for joining me today. I really appreciated it. If anybody would like to connect with Lynn, you can do so. Links in the description. Lynn, thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.
You too. All right. For everybody watching, you can find our sponsor, Thriving Woman Counseling. You can find that in the links in our description. They offer 15-minute consultations as well as 8-week group therapy sessions. I said that properly. All right, go check them out. Link in the description. Please like, follow, and share the show. Join our newsletter to see what's upcoming, as well as if you'd like to be a guest on the show or if you'd like to see a topic featured, please reach out to us. Again, you can reach out to myself, Melissa Krechler, or you can reach out to the show at just about any one of our social media accounts. We are always going to answer. So lots of love just to family. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, morning, evening, whatever day it is. And I will see all of you on the next episode. Bye.